Evening, everyone. Welcome to a late edition of the Rangers Journal here on Sunday night. Joined by a couple of guys in the podcast here, and we're just going to go through the motions of the weekend and just sort of get our feelings out there and just sort of have a wee therapy session between ourselves and you guys watching. Just joining me is Ross, Dino, and Ryan. So start with Ross.
I am good. I'm good. Thanks, Jock. It's certainly been an eventful 48 hours or so. I was on the news show at lunchtime on Friday, and we were all under the impression that it was going to be one guy taking the reins, and we seem to be throwing a few curveballs. So I'm looking forward to getting into the kind of nitty gritty of it.
Dino, how are you doing, mate?
I'm good, thanks, mate. Just having a good day with the band to take my mind off the rather depressing outcomes. So, her to give me a kiss and cuddle and tell me she loves me is put a wee sweetener on the disappointing outcome of Gerrard, put it that way.
Yeah, I'd say that take your mind off this carry-on, wouldn't it? Melt your heart. And finally, Ryan, how are you doing? How are you feeling?
I'm fine. It was just listening. There was something I seen funny last night. It was a wee meme that came out that kind of reminded me of my time when the kids were young. Was put the kids an hour ago, and then all of a sudden they show up in the living room asking you if cats have got shoulders, which is reminiscent to the old Sunday nights back in the day with heartbeat and stuff like that being on the telly. But it's a long time ago for me. The kids are 15 and 19 anyway, so it's a long time ago for that. I can shout at them and threaten them to go to bed now. So not that easy years with this, but apart from that, it's very kind of back to square one again. Feels as if the wind's been taken out the sails again, and it's I think that's Simpsons thing that their days since Rangers made a mess of it, to put it politely, back down to zero again. So we'll wait and see what the week comes ahead. But at this moment in time, nothing surprises me.
No, you're right. I think you take the words out of my mouth. As the wind's been knocked out the sails completely after obviously the news that Steven Gerrard has just pulled out of the running for the job. Whenever I think everyone was pretty confident that he was going to take it. It was going to be a piece of cake. He was going to come in, and that feel good factor I think that we were all sort of clinging on to was going to be back. Certainly I had it, and he wasn't even in the door yet. But then that's more for me, as you say, that nothing's done in football until it's done, essentially, and we as Rangers fans know that only too well. It's something we've had to deal with across the years, haven't we? Ross, then just your initial reaction then, how you feeling about the whole Gerrard saga? Disappointed? We move on, or
moving on is all we can do, let's be brutally honest. I think I'd probably spent a couple of days preparing that he was going to be the manager. I was quite vocal that I didn't want him to come back. I thought there were other options out there that I thought would have suited us better, but the Rangers board had made a decision, and like they did with Russell Martin, I was of the opinion that whatever decision that they make, I'll support until there's a reason not to. But something's obviously happened. I think what probably wasn't helping was that so much of the support had geared themselves up for Steven Gerrard coming back. We were getting almost daily teasers, what seemed to be teasers from Jermaine Defoe, getting us all hyped and getting people believing it was just a matter of time. We had reports, and to have that that pulled from under your feet in the last, basically it seems to be the kind of final steps of whatever deal was getting done is actually quite disappointing, and it's quite embarrassing, to be honest with you, the fact that it's got at this stage and it's become so public, and we're now, as Ryan said, just back to one again.
Yeah, nail on the head there. Just your thoughts on the whole situation. I know everybody's opinion is going to be different, so I just want to get everybody's feeling of the whole thing.
Hell, I was of the mindset that our new manager was going to be in place by close of play today. I was thinking a week is a good enough amount of time, and given the circumstances surrounding Russell Martin, I think we're all of the opinion that he should have been given his matching orders weeks beforehand. So the the director of football and the CEO should have had a contingency plan in place, and the way that top football clubs should be run, is that managers are going to be getting sacked, but we need to have been making advancements to replacements. And irrespective of the fact that Gerrard was target number 1, number 2, number 3 should have been, look, you're a good enough candidate, but if Gerrard doesn't take the job, we're going to come to you. And it doesn't seem like that's actually the case. So, given that we're a week into it already, it's, as Rusty there, it's just further embarrassment as far as I'm concerned. Absolute bin fire of a football club at the moment, and it's not looking like it's going to be getting put out anytime soon.
Yeah, bin fire is one of the best ways to describe it. Folks, I know we might be having some issues with the audio. Bear with us. We'll try and get that. Looked at. Just a shout out to Scotsman in Spain, who's kind of donated us a couple of £1 there. Thanks for that, much appreciated. I'll go towards Scottish holiday again. Ryan, again, just reiterate your thoughts on the whole situation then before we start looking at other things.
Like it just seems to be one kick in the nuts between another kick in the nuts, and it's been going on for too long now. Like it's not even prior to the Americans coming. You look at this point last season, I think we were still playing at Hampden. And the next thing we're selling our players under value. We're coming out publicly saying that our guys are refusing to come off the bench. I can't see anything at this moment in time at Rangers that is going well just now. You look at the men's, the women's team aren't doing well. The B team's been disbanded. We're not bringing any young players through. The trading model's not working. We're not developing the stadium properly. Everything at this moment in time is an absolute shambles. We can't even turn around and say the merchandise is nice. Even the merchandise isn't nice. There's nothing at this moment in time that I can say, this is what we're doing, this is really good. Everything just now seems to be just one thing after another. And it's getting to the point where a lot of people are just shrugging their shoulders and just not caring. And it's sad.
Yeah.
It's sad.
Yeah, I agree. It's sad. It's just another sort of indicator as to where we are really, even with new ownership. We're still struggling. We're still seem to be, struggling with the same problems, whether it be on the football pitch, whether it be with the manager, whether it be off field in terms of in the boardroom. It's just, these things just keep going and going, and this new leadership model that's come in, it's just not been a great start for them at all. And we're back to square one again, and we're sitting scrambling now because our preferred candidate, particularly the fans' preferred candidate, has turned around and said no after flying how many thousands of miles to come in for talks, and then we're being led to believe everything's going smoothly and things are positive, and then next thing you know, he's pulled out, and then we're sitting here scrambling again. It's definitely not a good look for the club itself, for the new owners, and you can understand the fans' frustration, and you can see the fans' frustration online, social media posts and stuff. I think it's just one of these ones where I think with this new, whoever they do decide to appoint, we are just going to have to try and put what's happened for the first couple of months of this season to one side and try and get behind it. But it's a big ask to ask.
It is, and the support is already, starting to lose faith in the owners and the decisions that they've made so far in their short period of time in charge, and even before they came in. I think it's probably not unfair to assume that they had a say in the appointment of Patrick Stewart as perhaps an overseer towards the takeover, and he's not a particularly popular character amongst the Rangers support. So we've had so many false dawns at this point. It's actually, people don't want to get excited about something that could potentially be, something that positive, because we are just waiting for the next described as. So I don't blame the support for being fed up, and then when we have the debacle that is Russell Martin and the complete failure that was, then the owners coming out and admitting that there's a problem and they apologised for it, and they're like, we'll learn from it. That's totally okay. That's very fair and it's very responsible of them. But then when it comes to after it, they try and get Gerrard. It's not worked, and the next candidate is, Danny Rowe. I'm not trying to say anything against Danny Rowe. He's clearly a very talented coach, but he ticks the same kind of boxes, generally speaking, as Russell Martin in terms of the league that he comes from. He's a young kind of manager with not a lot of experience. So it's just, the fans don't want that. The fans wanted a name that they could relate to more, that hadn't spent years in the English Championship, and wanted us to go and branch out and, try and scout managers that were further afield than just, England, because we're fed up with it. To be honest, we're fed up with expensive buys from England that are costing us. They're talking about, if they want to go and spend £8 million on Yusuf Chermiti, why would they not go out and spend the money on a half decent manager? So it's the fans have just enough, to be honest with you, and I don't blame them. And then when it comes out, the names that are linked, the short lists include, and differing levels of, interest. It's guys like Graham Potter, Gary O'Neill, Michael Carrick, names like that. They're all for the market. There's other markets out there that you can get better value for money for players and for managers. And I think, like I say, the fans they just want something different from what we've been served up for the last 6 months.
We'll come to just some of those names that you were chatting about there, Ross. Have a wee slide here we can go to. Dino, as Ross says, we're looking in this. It seems to be this championship basement. So we say we kind of call it a basement. I suppose it's maybe comes across that way just because obviously the size of Rangers. But do you think we should be looking outside of England, outside of Scotland? Should we be going European again, or do you think we should be looking closer to home?
In terms of calibre, I think our options are, hate to admit it, but probably quite limited in terms of calibre and stature as to the type of person that we feel that needs to be brought in right now. But in terms of shopping out with Britain, I wouldn't be against that as long as there's Scottish, British coaches and part of the backroom staff, ideally people, at least one or two people who have been in the atmosphere of Ibrox and the Goldfish Bowl in Glasgow and Scottish football. However, what I will say is that I don't think for the good of the owners, just for the good of them, they need to be thinking out with the championship. And it's not really just the last 6 months. It does go back further than that, because Michael Beale came for the championship. He was a failure as well. Do you know what I mean? So Clermont was a winner, stuff failure. Van Bronckhorst winner was a failure. And Van Bronckhorst had the luxury of being a fan favourite and part of a very memorable treble. So I don't think that it is, if they decide to shop out with Britain and they go completely left field, then they have to be appointing at least one or two coaches who have been in and around Rangers. And one thing I will say is, when Russell Martin came in and one of the pressers' question was put to him about how do you feel about having to win every game, and he's like, but you have to win every game, every club. But every club isn't Rangers. Like, do you know what I mean? So, and I feel that that's quite synonymous throughout the championship, and people south of the border who don't actually realise the mammoth of a task it is managing Rangers, and what actually expectations are from day one that you sit in the hot seat. So yeah, I don't envy the job that they're doing, but it needs to be right, because I'm all deflated. I have no optimism for the next manager coming in. If it is Ralph Huston-Hall or Danny Rowe or any game, I'm all out of optimism and backing any manager. So and I feel that that's going to be there's going to be a few Rangers fans that are like that.
Yeah, Ryan, I think Dino's spot on there. I think that's going to be the board's biggest problem, and this new manager's biggest problem is trying to pick up the pieces of the mess that they've basically created. And the sacking and the apology that came out obviously sort of probably bought them a wee bit of leeway with the fans in terms of, right, they owned up to their mistake and they knew they've got it wrong. But this one they can't get wrong, can they?
No, because you're looking now. It's Martin's obviously lost his job. You're now looking now at Thelwell and Stewart are probably the next in line if this doesn't work out. That they're probably the ones that are going to take the blame for it next time round, even though they're maybe not actually not driving the recruitment for this one. We're obviously like to believe that Marath, Kavanagh and Steenson are actually basically heading up the manager side of things, which speaks volumes in itself that maybe they don't actually have the trust in Thelwell as Stewart to do it. The thing for me, that my kind of two main things about the next Rangers manager, I'm not massively keen on the Danny Rowe, to be honest with you. I'm looking for a manager that's going to come in with a decent wealth of talent, experience on here. So I'm looking for somebody that's managed for about 4 or 5 years, possibly longer if possible, if we could get somebody like that, who has an affinity or at least a strong knowledge and understanding of what Rangers Football Club is all about. The only two of the kind of names that have been kind of thrown about recently that meet that, Gerrard obviously been one that now's gone, but the other two were Muscat and McInnes on there. McInnes obviously played for the club under Walter Smith. I don't really remember Derek McInnes ever doing a bad job at any of the clubs he's ever really been at. We've got a problem with him that the Hearts are doing so well, and why would you leave a club that are doing well who are on an upward trajectory, whereas at this moment in time we seem to be in a bit of a downward trajectory. So, but Andy's also knocked us back before. Muscat's got the problem in that he's probably not going to be available for 5, 6, 7 weeks or something. I don't know if we can wait that long for him. But like I said weeks ago, the main things I didn't want another one of these project managers. I'm sick of project managers. Rangers aren't a project manager club. We're actually, an established. We'd like to think we're one of the bigger names in Scottish football or world football even. So I don't understand why we're going out looking for project managers. I don't understand why we're taking gambles on foreigners and stuff, and they come in and they are shocked about what this is all about. That they can't walk down the street without getting stopped and asked the question. Sometimes they get welcome, sometimes they don't get welcome, depending which side of the street they're walking on. But it's the whole thing with it is it's massive. I know somebody's saying there that Gerrard was a project manager. Different times with the football club back then. We were still very much in a mode of recovery at that point, both financially and our status within the game as well. We're 3 years ago, we were in a European, competition final. We were in the Europa League final just a few years ago. Now I don't think we could even actually realistically take on half the teams in our own league and do well, never mind the Europa League. So it has to be somebody with experience that's going to come in. I'm disappointed it's not Gerrard. I'm still not 100% convinced that the deal's actually dead. I think there's still a possibility because this whole kind of not at the right time thing, what does that actually mean? What does that mean? There's the rumours of the tax thing. Is it not at the right time because there's a tax problem? So if there's a tax problem, that's just a money problem. That can be fixed. If we're led to believe that the pockets are as deep as what they are with the 49ers enterprises, money problems can be fixed. Is it a time thing because he doesn't believe that the people that are in and around him are going to help him, i.e. Thelwell, Stewart? That can be fixed as well. So I'm not 100% sure where we are, but we need to fix it. We need to fix it quickly because we've got a big game on Saturday, and we're very much in a make or break thing. We're holding on to a possibility of being in this league and in this competition. We're still in 4 competitions at this moment in time.
Yep. But
2 of them at this moment in time we are hanging on to by our fingernails. So it needs to get done pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think you're right because we are running out of time because we're coming into Monday now. And as you say, there's a big game on Saturday, and it's a must-win game for the team in terms of trying to claw some sort of status back in the league in terms of and try and gather some momentum. But the big worry is that it could be Stevie Smith that's taking the team for that match, because say obviously he's taking the training and Lou and nobody being there to do it. Ideally, the situation was this was all resolved by Monday morning, and there's somebody in place, but we're not going to get that now. So moving on then, Sky and whoever keep putting up people's names and then keep deleting them. I've noticed that over the weekend because I don't think anybody seems to really have a clue what's going on. The only thing we do know is that Gerrard ruled himself out. That's obviously the breaking news across the weekend. So we have a slide here, and the bookie's favourite now is Danny Roll, and I'm sure you've all seen the reaction on social media to that news that Danny Roll is pretty much in the driving seat of this at the moment, for what we're led to believe. Ross, we did do a piece on Danny Roll this summer. It was myself that did it, and you know the guy Dan Fudge at Sheffield Wednesday talked very highly of the guy. Did say that he did work under quite extenuating circumstances, obviously because of the transfer embargo they were under, and obviously the club's even more in a mess now, and barely even managed to field an 11 come the start of the season. But they managed to do that. Okay, but he walked away. And I think the what's happening now is he actually tried to take them to court for basically his owed money. Just your initial thoughts then on the first man on the page for us.
I mean, it's the easy answer for me to say is that he's not for me. But I think what you probably need to understand is that he's not a carbon copy of Russell Martin, which has been a bit of a lazy comparison that's been made over the last couple of days. I think. And I know I've kind of said it myself that he's a guy from England and we need to stop shopping there. But to use the Russell Martin comparison, Russell Martin had kind of, gained managerial experience at provincial clubs like MK Dons and Swansea City. I don't mean that any disrespect to any of those clubs, but they're not demanding environments. Swansea City don't need to win every week. Danny Rowe, in his coaching capacity, has been at Bayern Munich. And I think he was at the German national team as well. Please correct me if I'm wrong there. They're high pressure places with big personalities and big expectations. And we talk about how important culture is around clubs from every member of staff. We always talk about managers, but you talk about coaching staff. You talk about at Rangers, we talk about how important even people like the kit men are. It's the same, and it's the same at Bayern Munich. It's the same kind of environment. So he's got that experience of being in that kind of scenario. Is it maybe just a bit too early for him? I know he's done a fantastic job at Sheffield Wednesday, and they are an absolute basket case of a club. And I actually feel incredibly sorry for them. Some of the way, because we know firsthand what bad owners do to clubs and how fans at times can just feel so useless, regardless of how much time they spend and how much money they spend going to support them, and they're just getting completely undermined. And we understand that more than most, so how that can affect managers. But he's clearly a talented coach, but again, he's a project manager, and I agree with Ryan. We're not a project club. We're not. I think we need an established manager or head coach, whatever the title you want to use. I don't really care, because it's the same guy. He's the guy that picks the team. He's the guy that takes the training. He's the guy that's involved in day-to-day running of the team. It doesn't matter. Every manager now has the same job. Every manager works under directors of football up and down the country, whether you're the Chelsea head coach or the Man United manager. You work under directors of football. So that, to me, that doesn't really make much of a difference, if I'm being honest. I just think, is he one of these guys that, maybe in the kind of the name that's been thrown about was Francesco Farioli, a guy that we kind of bookmarked for one for the future, and then by the time the future comes, we can't afford them because he's been at Ajax and Porto and out with our spending. So do we perhaps have that idea that we need to get him now before he becomes too expensive, if he's going on the trajectory that people believe that he can do as a coach?
Yeah,
I don't know. So I don't think it's fair to just immediately say that he'd be a disaster, because he's not that kind of manager or head coach the same way that Russell Martin was. And all you need to do is look at the reaction of the Sheffield Wednesday supporters on social media, how much that they're saying he'll be a good fit, whereas everybody you've seen from Southampton were like, this will be a disaster. So I think you have to kind of judge it, perhaps on a more individual basis. But I think we just, at this moment in time, for the position we're in, we need somebody perhaps with a little bit more experience.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm looking for, Ryan, is experience and a figurehead, a leader, and Gerrard had that because when he first came in the first time, he had that aura, he had that stature, he had that presence, and when he spoke, you listened. The last couple of managers you've had, as soon as they start speaking, after a couple of minutes, you switch off because it's not, it's waffle. It's the same repetitive nonsense, and they just don't hold your attention. What do you think of Danny Rowe?
I mean, his CV isn't that dissimilar to David Ancelotti's, really, when you actually look at the success that he's had as a number two. And I think probably there was quite a lot of Rangers fans who were quite happy if Ancelotti became the Rangers manager in the summer. So I think these people probably need to get behind Danny Rowe, or face being hypocrites to themselves, sort of thing. Maybe just kind of slightly turn their nose up the fact that he was the Sheffield Wednesday manager for a short period of time and didn't come from anyone else. So he seems to be a young manager with a decent level of pedigree. I'd just rather he wasn't coming in the circumstances coming in. I'd rather, if we were going to take somebody like this, we should have taken him in the summer and given him a chance to build his own squad and put his own philosophy and his own kind of side of things on. I don't know if he's got the experience and the wherewithal and enough about him to come in and rebuild, truth be told, what's an absolute shambles at this moment in time. So if he does come in, he's going to require a certain degree of patience from the fan base. And we all know that we aren't the most patient of fans.
Yep, spot on. I think you've nailed it there. For me, I think what Ryan says is, if we're bringing this guy in, we should have brought him in the summer. Do you agree?
Aye, and that's kind of going back to the whole not a project manager team. We were a project manager team in the summer, and that's why David Ancelotti was, the one that everybody wanted, because we all felt that he was going to be coming in and playing under this new dynamic and structure at the football club. Now, you get one of them in, there's not a chance in hell that it's going to go well. And it's timing for the guy, not now. Maybe in a couple of years, and I'm being incredibly hypothetical and optimistic here, that we're in a far better position with a league title or two under our belt, and we've got the foundations in place for a project manager to actually come in and succeed. But not a quarter of the way through the season with us 8th in the league and needing to win on Saturday to even have a remote chance of finishing second, let alone first at the end of the season, in a Europa League campaign that's been as parallel of a worse start as what probably that game in Luxembourg was all those years ago. So it's definitely not the right time for the guy. But given his pedigree and of his coaching CV, and just looking at that, I mean, he could come to Rangers and could be career suicide coming here, coming in and being sacked before the end of the season. Do you know what I mean? So I think if I was him, I wouldn't touch it with a barge pole.
I think you're right. I think at the moment now, we definitely look like we're definitely going to be shooting ourselves in the foot, I think, for potential appointments, especially high-profile appointments, because they'll be looking at the last couple of people that we have hired and sacked within a year or less, couple of months or less, and they're going to think, why would I want to go there? Because if it doesn't go well, it's a massive club, and then I'm going to be struggling for a job after this. Even though the standard league that we're in, they obviously have the confidence to come here, but if it goes wrong, usually, and as we've seen, if it goes wrong at Rangers, it usually goes spectacularly wrong, doesn't it? And you've only got the last manager to look at that and see that. Derek McInnes, Ross, is one that's obviously popped up. He had a chance previously. He said no. I can understand why he said no at that point. As Ryan says, we were trying to establish ourselves back in this league. We were not long up, and anybody coming into that hot seat at the time was obviously going to be under severe pressure. And I think somebody like Derek McInnes, with his history with the club, probably would have felt that more than most. Do you think he would have done a decent job first time round, or do you think now that he's been in the league and he's jumped around a couple of clubs, he's got a bit more experience? Do you think he would do a better job now as a Rangers manager?
Yeah, well, I think probably hindsight, looking back to what we ended up with, would tell you that Derek McInnes probably should have took the job at the time. And even though we weren't great, he was clearly at the time a good manager. But he didn't want to leave Aberdeen for whatever reason, whether it was people at the club, and there's been a lot of conjecture over the years about what was the reasons behind him not taking it, whether it was to do with people involved at Rangers or whatever. But that's all in the past. But he would have been a decent manager at the time. What he has done, I think, to his credit, is he's went to other clubs and probably established himself as a better manager. Because at the time he was at Aberdeen, they were kind of a bit of the kind of always the bridesmaid, never the bride. They'd kind of a bad record in cup finals. I know he did win one at Aberdeen, but they had so many opportunities to win cups and they didn't. You put there that there was a sustained title challenge and they kind of bottled it with, I think, maybe 10 games to go. But he's probably a better manager now, and you're clearly seeing the benefits of him having good scouting and more finances behind him as a manager, and he's more experienced manager. So I think he would actually probably be a good, a good appointment now. But what we're probably seeing is a sad indictment of the state we're in. That 7 years ago, or 7 or 8 years ago, Derek McInnes should have got the job, and we're saying here now Derek McInnes could probably still take the job. That we've went completely backwards again. So, but he ticks boxes for me. I was always kind of quite against McInnes, but I think that the state we're in, we need a bit of stability. And is Derek McInnes going to be the guy that's going to come in and win hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of trophies? I wouldn't think so. But I think at this moment in time we do need just to be able to build the foundations again. And I think he could do that. I really do. I think he's a far better manager now than people give him credit for. I think he kind of had a bit of a reputation as just being kind of playing for set pieces and kind of one of these old school managers. But he sees Hearts team now, and they're a decent football team, and I think he could do that at Rangers as well. And I know he's not the popular choice, and I understand why. People talking about Gerrard's knocked his back, McInnes has knocked his back. Sometimes you need to maybe just bite the bullet and understand at the time and wasn't right. But we're at a situation now where there's a bit of kind of to and fro as to whether he would actually take the job. And if you had any common sense about you, why would you take the job? Genuinely, why would you leave Hearts, who are top of the league just now and have been excellent, under the new leadership with Tony Bloom, and Derek McInnes is very much part of that. He's not there, in spite of that, he's part of the reason why they're doing so well. So I mean, if you had any common sense, you'd say no, but they could do much worse than ask the question. There was an article, I think it was a couple of days ago, saying that his compensation to pay him off is 500 grand. Come on, if that was the chance for maybe a couple of years of stability at this moment in time, I would take it ahead of some of the other names.
I think that's what we're craving, isn't it? It's stability. It's just seeing a stable Rangers team go on the pitch and at least try and win a game of football and just not look the way we've looked over since this pre-season, really. And you just see that it's just not worked. And what's been passed down to them hasn't worked. And the players, just as we've seen them, and it's been obviously highly publicised, that they don't look coached, or if anything, they look overcoached. Ryan, do you think Derek McInnes could solve that, or at least bring that stability Ross is talking about there?
Yep, absolutely. Bread and butter Scottish football. Knows it like the back of his hand, inside out. Knows the expectations. Knows what's required at the club. Very much embedded and knows what trust the traditions are of the club and stuff like that. Having served under the greatest manager in history, he's very much a kind of no-brainer one. If everyone is serious, very low risk, I would say, with Derek McInnes. The hardest thing about it is just actually getting Hearts to let him go. We've seen before them playing hardball with some of their assets in the past, most notably Shankland. A couple of years ago, they were pretty much unwilling to let him go. I think they were talking £5 million that we were wanting off us. If Rangers had that, even asked the questions, we don't know if they did. But McInnes for me out of all these there. But I wouldn't expect a lot of European glory under McInnes. I think that's something that would maybe be a bit more challenging for him, given his experience and stuff like that. But would I feel comfortable getting into the semi-final at Hampden a couple of weeks' time, McInnes being the manager? Damn right I would.
Dino, there's a lot of people in the comments here talking about Terzic, and there's somebody else they're chatting here. Let me try and find it. Oh, I've lost it. But I know I already asked you earlier. Derek McInnes, as Ryan says there, you'd probably have to take the hit of the European football if Derek McInnes came in, because obviously he doesn't have that much experience. But I think if you did bring him in, I think it would matter at this point in this season, because I think we've already took the hit for the European football with Russell Martin, and I think we're already scrambling if we want to try and look past European football past December. Anyway, would you accept that? Would you rather focus on the league and try and get as far out as we can? Because at this point, we're obviously going to be struggling to qualify for the Europa League this year.
It's an uphill task for whoever comes in, but what we'll say is Derek McInnes is probably one of the very few managers that will be able to come in and get a bit of patience from the Rangers support, because there's reasons the guys have alluded to as to why him and Scottish football go hand in hand. I would be fine to just have him concentrate on domestic and concentrate on us getting us far up the league and as far enough as far in the cups as possible. And in terms of his lack of European progression, so to speak, sometimes he's been unlucky. Let's be honest, he has been unlucky previously in certain qualifiers and things like that. And I really enjoyed listening to him when he would be a pundit for our games. And he is very, very knowledgeable. One thing I tell you, what we wouldn't be doing is getting beats 3-1 at home by Bruges or 6-0 away. That's for sure. He'd have us well drilled, well organised, disciplined, so we wouldn't get our pants pulled down and spanked in front of the whole of Europe, that's for sure. So I would feel safe with him, and that's that word stability. Get him in, and as I said, we will give him patience. We will give him probably more time than you'd get for Danny Rowe or any other person that's coming north of the border. And that's something else I think that the owners should be looking at is the aspect of that, and name gaining credit in the bank, because there's zero credit with them at the moment. And appointing somebody like McInnes is, I just said there, playing under Walter Smith, I think Walter Smith was very much an advocate of Derek McInnes' managerial abilities and stuff. And a lot of players have said how good a man manager he is, irrespective of the fact if our players are coached or under-coached. They're needing a man manager in there as well, somebody that will be able to have that relationship with them. And Derek McInnes is that man, and we're badly needing somebody to come in and actually play good football and winning football in Scotland, because we've been starved of that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'll stick with you, then on Michael Carrick. Now, if you said to me Michael Carrick to Rangers, and I said 10 years ago, the player, 100%, they bit your arm off. But as a coach, as a manager, looking at his record there, obviously I know he's only sort of come into coaching the last couple of years, where he's taken over Middlesbrough and stuff like that. But again, if you're looking down that championship route, and again, it's probably not going to stick with some of the fans, is it?
Nah, I'm going to tell you right now, you could probably count all the fans in one hand that would be happy with that appointment. I think there's more constant than there is pros with that one. Honestly, no chance. That's probably just Russell Martin 2.0 as far as I'm concerned. Other than the fact, he would wear a shirt and tie at the sidelines, that's for sure. But I can't see him, ticking any more boxes. I'm sorry.
Ryan, Michael Carrick, you think this is just a Sky Sports just punting names just to try and get interest and drum up interest on people that are in and around the game down there?
He's probably just going to be one of these football journeymen that's going to hover around club to club in the kind of the Midlands of England. He's going to end up with West Brom at some point, Wigan, Burnley, and he's just going to be job to job to job to job without any kind of real success as such. My worry is the Man United connection. I've seen obviously these guys shopping in markets and looking at the Everton connections and all these kind of horrible appointments, appointing people that they worked with previously, to the point where they're actually giving their family jobs. My worry is that Michael Carrick might tick one of these boxes for them, and they just there. And surely to goodness no, surely as the football club that we are, we aspire to bigger things and better things than somebody who's never managed at the top level of football before, in this country or any other country at all, who's never won anything as a manager.
Yeah, I think you're right. We should be aiming higher than that. Ross, do you agree?
Yeah, 100%. I think that, thinking about Michael Carrick as his experience at Manchester United, he's basically been in the bricks at Manchester United for, the best part of 20 years, working under Ferguson, and even the managers that succeeded him that weren't successful, but they had names: David Moyes, Louis van Gaal, and then done his coaching under Mourinho, Solskjaer. These are big names, and again, we do talk about the pressure situations of Manchester United, and they're very similar to ourselves, and the way that they've been as a club recently is, it's almost parallel. It's uncanny, but again, that's just a guy that if he hadn't been at Manchester United, the name wouldn't even be entertained. Let's be brutally honest. It shouldn't be entertained. I just don't think that. It's another project manager. It's a guy that's had a half decent spell at a mid-table championship club. I know they did a decent cup run. They got the semis of the League Cup last year, I think. But he's another guy that's out of a job. We need to stop. I'm of the opinion that we need to stop going for guys that are out of a job, because they're out of a job for a reason. Probably apart from Danny Rowe, he's out of a job for a different reason. Because, and like I mentioned, we were talking about their own, they're a bit of a disaster. But Michael Carrick's been sacked for a reason. Do you know what I mean? And I wouldn't get anywhere near him, to be brutally honest with you. And that's the sad part, is that, as Ryan said, they've been more inclined to go for him because they know who he is, as opposed to, is he the right guy for the job? No,
you're spot on. I think, like as you say there, Danny Rowe's out of a job for a reason. Everybody else we're looking at is either out of a job because they get sacked because what they've done previously just wasn't good enough, and that's not where we need to be looking. But just a big shout out to Martin here, who's dropped us £5 for us there. Appreciate that. Would you have Gio back? I'll just go through these quickly. Ross, I know he's down helping your man down Liverpool. Can't remember what his name's just left my head. Slot. Yeah. Would you consider it?
Nah. As much as I love Gio, I was a Gio guy. I thought he get dealt a bit of a bad hand, but you know what? It's the same reason. One of the reasons I didn't want Gerrard back. We need to move on. We need to move forward and don't let we always talk about Gio. The history's looking kind on him. I think history will look kind on Gio, and I don't want that to be tarnished, to be honest with you.
Ryan?
Much the same as Ross. Wouldn't want to tarnish his legacy and the nice memories we had of him. The circumstance at the time when Gio came in, Gerrard was walking away from a team that were sitting top of the league at the time. And we're sitting as champions of the league before, undefeated, whereas at this moment in time he's going to be coming and picking up something which is the polar opposite of it, and I don't know if Bronckhorst would have that in his locker to be able to do something like that.
Dino?
Nah, no for me. I'm wanting to no longer see the horseshoe at Ibrox, so no from me.
Last on the list we have is Kieran McKenna. Now I know he had a sort of meteoric rise, shall we say, from back-to-back promotions.
Have we lost Jock?
No, am I here? No.
I can hear you.
You can hear Jock, yeah. Aye, so back-to-back promotions with Ipswich, took them up to the Premier League, and then I think wasn't able to sustain it, which is always a tough ask for any team that does back-to-back promotions. I think to go into the Premier League and then try and be expected to stay there in your first year. The whole point of the Premier League is to try and establish yourself in the Premier League and stay there for a couple of years, and it's so difficult now for these teams that are coming up, because the money that the other teams around them have is just ridiculous to compare to obviously what we have at Rangers. So for me, Kieran McKenna, I know he's an Ulsterman, probably not for me. Ross?
Nah, I think at this moment in time, we've used the phrase trajectory a couple of times. He seems to be on a little bit of a bit of a trough in his managerial career. He had a bit of a high back-to-back promotion, which by the way is actually a sensational achievement, going from League One up to the Premier League for a club like Ipswich, who are historically a kind of top tier club in England. They probably think they should be playing in the top flight in England. UEFA Cup winners in the 80s. They're a historically semi-big club compared to other teams that are probably in ahead of them. So it was a great achievement. But I think what we've learned is that the step up to the Premier League is massive. And he's another one of these guys who perhaps didn't want to completely change how he plays, regardless of the opposition. So it's not probably better staying where he is and trying to get Ipswich back up to that level again.
Ryan? You're muted, mate.
Sorry about that. I struggle for an opinion on him. It's probably the two back-to-back promotions probably actually didn't help him more than anything else. The jump into the Premier League pretty much with a League One team was obviously too much for him, that side of things. So, but as far as somebody that can actually get results, if you look at, compared to Rowe and Carrick, if you're having to shop down that neck of the woods, if their insistence is that they're going to get somebody from there, then it's you're looking at McKenna is actually somebody who's actually got some credentials behind it. So that's, of the three there, apart from McKenna's obviously be my first choice on it, you're probably saying McKenna's is that one.
Dino? Dino there?
Dino?
He's actually got some credentials behind it.
Aye, so I never heard a word that either Ross or Ryan said. I had to turn my phone up so I could catch what you were saying, and my phone's obviously maybe about 30 seconds behind. So I didn't want to regurgitate what you guys have just said. So aye, Kieran McKenna. I mean, it's another one of them. Did we all getting back-to-back promotions? That's all fair and well. But did really poorly with him in the Premiership, didn't he? So kind of puts me off. I know it's a big jump and all the rest of it, but I remember not reading particularly good things about how his team played and stuff in the Premiership. And going from being relegated in the Premiership to a relegation battle at Rangers is maybe a good thing. I'm just obviously jesting there, but nah, no for me.
It'd be interesting to see then how the landscape changes tomorrow, because tomorrow is a brand new day. You'd like to think that the discussions of what at least went on today as well, for folk down and around that part of the country, if everything's been based out of London, you like to think there's been another day's worth of discussions or interviews. Let's just hope they're not interviewing the same guy 7 times. Ryan, you popped up first on the screen there. I'll come to you first. Ryan, if you were to pick, who's your ideal candidate? Who do you want now that Gerrard's out and so we've got that list in front of us? Is there anybody else that's not on that list?
I'm asking to speak to Muscat. Just someone again, expectations, of British heritage. Although he was an Australian international, I think he was born and raised in England. Spent a wee bit of time at the club, so things that happen in and around the club won't surprise him. He's obviously been pretty successful over in Asia as well. He's won leagues, he's going for another one, which is unfortunately to our detriment, because he's probably going to want to see the job done over there before he even thinks about possibly coming over to Europe and going to somebody else. But, employing somebody who's a winner, who's came to us with a taste of silverware, rather than getting guys who are coming to try and, build their own reputation. This guy has done really, really well. And we've seen it done across the city. Again, unfortunately, to our detriment of what can happen when you bring people over from Asia and they come and they've got a great knowledge and understanding of what the market could be like over there. And could it be replicated? Maybe, but he's probably the most obvious one of the ones that are missing here, the people that are getting asked about.
Ross, yourself then? Anybody that's not been mentioned?
I mean, I've long been the sole member of the Rangers Journal Kevin Muscat fan club. Routinely, I think he's the guy for us at the moment. He's the best option for what we can get. I've always said that we're never going to get the perfect manager because we wouldn't be able to afford them, quite simply. But you want a guy that ticks as many boxes as you can, and I think as Ryan really put it so well, that he's a guy that comes here that understands Rangers well. So he says he was an Australian international, he grew up, he's played in Britain, and I don't think that there's a lot of difference between, kind of Scottish football and English low league football for the last, 25, 30 years. I do think I think his reputation still is of a guy that was a bit of a thug, but he's not like that as a manager. A lot of his interviews, if you go and watch anything from his time over in Japan and China, he comes across as a really, really hard-working, intelligent guy. Everybody speaks well about him. He's clearly a good man manager. He's been at Rangers, and I know it was only a season, but it was a wonderful season, where standards were set, playing with top-tier internationals, and with a spine of a team that was successful. Moore, Amoruso, Ferguson, De Boer. Whilst obviously we're not going to have that calibre of player, but what that team had was in spades Rangers assets, which was hard work, graft, determination. Whilst they could play a bit of football as well, but they were, they had all the assets of a successful Rangers team, and I think he could be part of that, and he could build that for his own Rangers team. He's got that what he's learned under, like you say, to our detriment of Ange Postecoglou. He's one of his best friends in football, but you can learn from different managers, learn different ways, and implement it. And honestly, if I was in charge, I'd have been the first plane out of Shanghai a couple of weeks ago. But you have to look at the bigger picture as well. They've got 4 games left of their season, and if we were in a title race and the manager left with 4 games to go, that would leave a sour taste. If you remember back to Graham Souness leaving for Liverpool in '91 with 4 games, I think it was 4 games left. And fortunately Walter stood up and delivered the title, but it was a last day shootout against Aberdeen. Take you back to then. So I would understand, but if that was one we would do, would we as a support be willing to, wait for 5 or 6 weeks with an interim team to bring him in? I don't know, because I think we're at a stage where we might be more desperate for results as opposed to, waiting a few weeks. I don't know.
I think you're right. I think it's, at the moment, it's results. All we care about is results, because that's what we're desperately need to try and clamber our way back up this bloody table. Dino, before I come to you, just want to shout out to Chaz, who has kindly donated £2 and is wanting somebody that knows the Scottish game, which is probably going to help. And they've also kindly gifted 10 memberships as well to the community, so we thanks for that. Dino, just then, anybody that's not been mentioned? Anybody, you a Muscat fan, or is there somebody there that hasn't been mentioned that you'd want to see in the door?
I was just trying to catch has to be Ross Westin, as I say, because I'm about 30 seconds behind on my phone, and still can't hear Ryan or Ross. So on Muscat, I pretty much echo everything that the guys said. Part of the last treble that we won, I think, but that is really important coming into Rangers. Somebody that knows what it does take to get over that line. And 22 years ago we last won a treble. It's scary when you think about it. And probably the only one that I would think that's not been mentioned, I'd be happy with the appointment of Stephen Robinson, who is, when he was at Motherwell, always gave us a good game, beat us at Ibrox, drew with us. Do you know what I mean? They always did well. The teams, really, 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 really tough games for us. And he's replicated that at St Mirren. So I think it would be snobbery to not even look at the possibility of him coming in as Chaz said, somebody that knows the game. He knows the game inside out, and he's got a bit of metal about him. So I think that's something else that's probably going to be needed. Knows how to handle the Scottish press. Knows what it's going to take to win at Ibrox. There's not going to be any bedding in time. I think that's something else maybe not be mentioned tonight and can sometimes perhaps be overlooked. We need a manager that's ready to go from day one. There can't be any bedding in time, and that does, and patience with, I said, with McInnes. You get patience, maybe get a bit of patience with Robinson as well, but the two can coexist as far as I'm concerned. But that's probably about it for me. Muscat and Robinson's probably the only two I would suggest are not on the list. I think are should be candidates for definitely coming in.
Yeah, I think Robinson's a good shout. He's like you say, his teams that anytime you come up against a Robinson team, it's always a surreal battle. It just makes it difficult for you, and if you're going to get something in the game, you need to fight for it. And that's something that this Rangers team we haven't seen for a long time is the ability to just knuckle down and actually scrap for a win. And that's something that sometimes you need to do that in this league, these games, because other teams will make it that and they'll drag it down to that level. And we have just never, not every game is like that, but majority of the games, especially away games, they just make it so hard, and they always seem to. It looks as though they're working harder, and they're over, and there's a more determination from them, and it really shows us up, and it makes us look bad, I think, and it looks bad on the players. But it's up to the manager to dig that out of them as well, and try and get that across. And Robinson, I think, is certainly somebody who would certainly do that. And our name I've seen in the chat, and I think has been talked about online, is your man. Is it? I'm not going to say Belic, but Belic's the Grand Theft Auto character. What's the Croatian guy?
Belic.
Belic. Belic, for me, if you'd said to me Belic again, maybe 8-10 years ago, I'd use 100%, because he was, again, as Ross says, he's one of these up and coming managers, but he had a good reputation and a good. When he talked, he listened. Was one of the, but he's just, every club he's went to there, it's always just, he's never there for any length of time. He never established himself anywhere anymore. He's always there for a short period of time and he's gone. So, I mean, I'm like yourselves. I just want somebody that's going to come in and just can grab this team by the scruff of the neck and just start getting results. Not worry about performances. Get results first, and then the performances side should look after itself, because the players will get more confident as the points start coming in and we start beating teams in and around us. Obviously, considering where we're at in the bloody league, then we should be looking higher than that as well, because we've got a tough run of games coming up, and particularly in Europe as well. So, and then again, but this is another thing that always seems to happen to us. We sack somebody before an international break, so by the time we get somebody in, the guys had little to no time with the team, and then we inevitably have another international break coming up just when we start to either hit a purple patch and we're hitting a bit of form. We end up breaking again, and then all that momentum's lost. We need somebody that's going to come in and hit the ground running and get this momentum up and running before the next international break, which I think is November, isn't it? I don't think we're far away from it. So, yeah, it's a tough one. It's just, we're just going to have to sit and really sort of wait and see what happens, aren't we? And just see who these guys are going to pick as the next Rangers manager. Guys, thanks for joining me. Ryan, Ross, Dean. I know it's a late one, but thanks for joining us. I'm going to give a shout out to our new sponsor, which is the Blue Bells pub, and I'm going to try and pronounce this, Puerto del Carmen, Lanzarote. So if any of you are heading to Lanzarote in the next couple of weeks, give them a look and make sure you shout that every night's a Rangers journey night when you're ordering a drink, and get the name out there for everybody. Thanks to everybody in the chat for joining us as well. I know we had a bit of issues there with sound and that, but thankfully it came good. I ended the last pod saying let's go again. I'm not be doing that, obviously. So it's just up to say Every night's the Rangers Journal night. Thanks very much, folks.
Every night is the Rangers Journal night. Every night is the Rangers Journal night.